Welcome to Health Authority TV. I'm Devin DeVries, Editor-in-Chief of Health Authority Books. Our mission here at Health Authority TV is to bring together a community of business health experts and find out what's currently happening in their area of the world and look to future possibilities. Our guest this week is Ann Bowers-Evangelista. She is a psychologist who specializes in leadership, and she is the author of The Endurance Leader. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Devin. It's such a pleasure to be with you today, as always.
Yeah, we love to have you. To start off, would you just share, who do you serve as a health authority?
Yeah, great question. I serve leaders who really desire a more productive and satisfying work life, which has massive impacts on ideally productivity, which companies care about, but their health and wellness as well, and the health and wellness of their employees. So, when you think about crafting a long-term approach that leaders are embracing, it really helps them remain well, not just in the immediate term, right? But they tend to kind of promulgate wellness in their organizations. So that's going to help with stress, with burnout, with quitting, turnover, and it also helps improve productivity, losing people you really want to hold on to, and frankly, long-term longevity and financial success. And there's lots and lots of statistics around stress and burnout right now, but these really helping leaders to think about how they can look at leadership from a long-term perspective that really engages in a healthier way of leading and being.
Thanks. And do you want to speak a little more to some of the services that you provide for those leaders?
Yeah, well, thank you for mentioning the book, The Endurance Leader, Leadership Longevity in a Fast-Paced World, which is now available on Audible. Let me just plug that, which is very exciting. So I provide a range of services related to the Endurance Leader, a lot of training and coaching, both individual and group coaching, to help leaders identify those very strategies we were just talking about, really understanding what does it mean to be an endurance leader and how to build a longitudinal approach. So that's one thing that I do. I also do a lot of work with teams to help them optimize their functioning and reducing some of that high stress that comes from really poor group dynamics, unaddressed conflict. I'm sure no one has ever had that happen on a team, murky role differentiation or poor organizational structures. All those things can contribute to what's happening in a team and, again, affect their short-term and long-term success. And then I also help organizations build frameworks for increasing kind of the culture, the kind of long-term leadership culture that they're promulgating, which often will involve things like greater self-awareness, humility, kind of health and wellness elements, all of these things that help leaders be more successful. And then I also help organizations create good hiring practices so that they can make sure they're hiring in good people who are going to be doing some of those things from the get-go. It's a lot easier to get the right people in at the front end than try to fix them on the back end. And especially when we think about health and health care, we need people who aren't just great technicians. Like you can think about surgeons and nurses and all the support people in health positions. Organizations have realized it's just not enough for them to be good at just being a surgeon. They need the best ones are exemplifying great leadership as well as great technical skill. And that's really getting organizations, healthcare organizations, to a different place.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can see how they would need those additional skills. And I would
absolutely.
imagine are maybe not taught in the
Oh,
medical
no.
school
In fact,
curriculum.
right. I mean, and in some cases, like discouraged,
Yeah.
right? I once heard uh, my spouse is a surgeon of sorts, is a mouth surgeon, but he says it is quite interesting. You literally put your hand out without saying a word, and someone puts the exact thing that you need at that very moment in it. there's a level of power that can be associated with that kind of role that is somewhat inconsistent with some of the humility and self-awareness associated with long-term leadership. So sometimes it's undoing some of the messages or maybe entitlements that can come with some roles in healthcare in particular, to help people see how they really need to be part of a team in order to be successful.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know your book has a lot of those tips and some great stories illustrating how that works. So we will definitely leave a link to that in the show notes for the
Thank
listeners.
you. That's great. Thanks.
And so now we are starting this conversation with our authorities and hopefully with our listeners to hear what they think as well. But based on your experience, how would you redesign America's healthcare system?
Yeah, I thought about this. I was like, this is such a huge question. And of course, if I had the answer, I would not have only written a book. I'm pretty sure I would have been able to retire from the millions and millions of copies of that book I would have sold, and perhaps all the engagements I'd have with governments all over the world. But particularly in the US, I think I kind of come back to this notion of a long-term approach, right? I think our system is in this moment very short-term focused, and we have organizations that are businesses and their goal is to maximize their profit. And I think that we have to understand that that is something that businesses do, while we also take a longer term view of what societally we need. And so, again, as from a leadership perspective, I think we need people that are really good technical experts and exemplify that exceptional leadership, that humility, transparency. And like we have a big focus on efficiency right now. And I agree that like part of what we need to fix is the efficiency and the third party payer system, which I can't claim to be an expert in, even though my MBA is in healthcare administration. It's a little old these days, but you know, under tying those efficiencies and outcomes directly to patient experiences, to me, would be really important. And I think that makes room for our entire US demographic. We see massive health disparities right now, and that are just being widened by our current system. So I think that if we can take a longer term view, like how do we want healthcare to serve our entire population for the next 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, we will come up with solutions that may not have quite the same payoff as they could right this moment, particularly for the businesses, but will create greater longevity, less utilization of those systems by the patients, and ideally better health outcomes for all of our population. So I don't know exactly what the future system looks like. I think we all agree it needs to change, and that with the right selection of leaders and teams, I think we can certainly create a better system that benefits all, not just those who can afford it. So that's those are my thoughts. I'm really interested to hear what continued guests have to say on this issue as well.
Yeah, we really appreciate you sharing. I think the more voices we have in this space talking about it.
Yeah.
And I liked your humility and leadership. I think, especially in this space,
That's right.
and empathy,
That's right.
thinking
Yeah.
about the patients and all
Yeah.
of that
Yeah.
will really help. And while yes, it is a business, there's
Yeah.
more to it than just the bottom
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, I think is when we can start bringing people who are maybe the most marginalized, the most adversely impacted to the table, and really hear, every single one of us gets a survey every single time we go to a doctor or we go to a hotel, right, to hear what we think. But people who are very adversely affected by healthcare probably don't get those surveys, and their opinions might not be very well known, or their experiences aren't that well known. And so I think opening up the dialogue and recognizing that that's only going to make the systems better. Know where the problems are first, right? And how to address those, the deepest, most kind of entrenched problems. And then you've got a recipe for creating a longer term success profile. Again, said from somebody who has not spent one day as a medical executive anywhere, but worked with some. And I think there are leaders out there that are humble, that are and willing to grow and willing to learn and really do want what's best for all of us. We need more of those.
Well, thank you so much. And as Anne was saying, this is a dialogue we want to continue. So for our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And I think as we get more people involved, we'll see what we can do to change it for the better.
Sounds great. Yeah, let's do that.
Well, so thank you for joining us. We will make sure you check out The Endurance Leader. And until next time, may you be healthy, wealthy, and wise.